In a video I posted earlier this week, I ran through a list of stuff that had been in the news lately that I wanted to talk about and lamented the fact that I didn't have time to make a video on each topic. And so I ended up picking one thing from the list and talking about it. I'd like to discuss another thing that was on that list today, and that is this fight over extending the payroll tax holiday that was enacted as part of the tax compromise roughly 1 year ago. Here's the deal. If you have a job and you're gainfully employed, then you probably noticed that chunk that FICA takes out of your paycheck every time you receive a check got a little bit smaller this year. That's because one thing that members of both parties were able to agree to as a way to jumpstart this economy was a temporary reduction in the FICA tax from 6.2% to 4.2%. Now, there are some important things you need to understand about this. One is that it was always intended that this would be temporary, and the law basically was 1 year. It'll be 1 year at the reduced rate, and then it'll revert back to the original 6.2%. It was never intended to be a permanent reduction in the rate, in other words. Another thing you need to understand, there was broad bipartisan consensus for this type of measure, and it was intended as a means of stimulating the economy, stimulating growth. And finally, you need to understand that you probably already know this because it probably says so on your paycheck, but payroll taxes are what fund Social Security and Medicare. Herman Cain has just suspended his presidential campaign. For comment, we now go to the Huntsman daughters.
We're bringing Huntsman back. The rest of them is one big circus act. We're right behind the guy who's right on track. You know we're gonna bring John Huntsman back. Take it to the bridge. Herman Cain. We like your pizza, but you can't explain.
Whoa, that was a little weird. Where was I? Oh, right. Here's the deal. President's been looking at this and realizing that, come year's end, that 6.2% rate's going back into effect. And I'm not exactly sure what his thought process was. Maybe he thought, if their tax rate goes back to what it was a year ago, then, I'm liable to get accused of raising taxes on middle-class families and lower-income families while the economy's still not that great. That's not good for me because I want to get reelected. Or maybe he's thinking, I can use this as an issue to attack the Republicans on. I honestly don't know how his political strategy progressed, or what his line of thinking was. Frankly, I don't care. The point is, President's been going around the country saying, if the Congress doesn't renew this payroll tax cut, then the average middle-class family will be hit with $1,000 or a $1,500 tax increase. It's weird. But basically, maybe he's trying to drive a wedge between Republicans, or maybe he's thinking he can use this to attack Republicans. What's really cynical, I think, is that the Democrats have proposed a bill that would extend the payroll tax cut and pay for it by slapping a surtax on incomes above $1 million. I think it's a 3.25% surtax, so 3.25%. This is interesting because This is actually talking about really high-income people. Normally, when the Democrats talk about taxing the rich, the people they're really sticking it to are the upper middle class, because the truly wealthy can afford to pay the higher taxes. The people who get hurt, first and foremost, are the upper middle class. And then in the long run, middle and lower income people get hurt because they can't get jobs, or the jobs that they have don't pay as well as they would if you weren't taking all that capital out of the private sector. And essentially, what I've been saying is that when you raise taxes on people who are very good at making money, you end up basically taking money away from people who are good with money and who know how to manage it, and putting it into the hands of people who aren't good with money and who have proven that they're irresponsible and shouldn't be trusted with more money, i.e., the federal government. So let's flash forward to this week. Basically, the Republicans and the Democrats have their own proposals. Now, I actually came out with a suggestion for how Republicans should handle this payroll tax issue. I think they can beat the president, hoist him by his own petard. If you want to read my suggestion, then I wrote an article a week ago and posted it on my blog. Go there. And you know what? You really should be going to my blog, people. I really, I like it when my videos get a lot of hits. But, I mean, the blog is there, and I've got some really insightful stuff on there. So, go to my blog, please. Anyway, basically I said you know what, I'm not going to tell you what I said, because then, go read the article. Anyway, this week, competing proposals, Republicans and Democrats in the Senate. Thursday, the Senate finally voted on both of them. And at this point, I will turn it over to Mike Emanuel of Fox News to summarize.
Paying for an extension of the payroll tax holiday is the battle on Capitol Hill. Republican leaders say the GOP plan offered by Nevada Senator Dean Heller is better than the Democrats' idea of a surtax on the rich.
Our plan protects Social Security and reduces the federal deficit by more than $111 billion.
Oh, and what sort of draconian, heartless, job-killing cuts are you demanding, Senator McConnell?
To do that, Republicans have proposed a 3-year pay freeze for government workers, reducing the government workforce by 10% through attrition, and means testing government benefits for the wealthy, which were ideas in the president's own fiscal commission.
Oh, well, so basically we're not going to be raising what is already pretty generous pay for federal employees. We're going to allow the federal workforce to be reduced through attrition. So rather than doing indiscriminate layoffs, we're actually going to, basically have some sense about who we're laying off, and then adopting something the president's own debt commission proposed. In fact, means testing is something that Democrats have been crying for a long time. So, wow. What? I mean, how could any reasonable person oppose the Republicans' plan?
Democrats balked, arguing Republicans are punishing the middle class.
Republicans are saying, okay, but let's pay for it by firing 200,000 people. It's very interesting. This is a contrast that is worth noting, I believe.
Okay, I reiterate my question. How could any reasonable person oppose the Republicans' plan?
If it happens to be the FBI agent who's in the midst of a very important investigation to keep this country safe, it's another. If it's a medical researcher at the NIH.
All right. Apparently, the Democrats are short on reasonable people. So let's just, those two examples that Senator Durbin mentioned, here's the thing. if an FBI agent is at risk for losing his or her job through attrition, then that agent should not be assigned to a very important investigation. Ditto medical researchers at NIH. I'm not really sure Senator Durbin understands how attrition really works. Basically, at the risk of oversimplifying, it's a survival of the fittest type policy. When it comes to attrition, when it refers to employment, it's like a survival of the fittest in the workplace. But go look it up. Listen, you know what would really be a great counterpoint to this left-wing hysteria that Democrats are propagating? If only there was like some image we had of two moderate senators, one Republican and one Democrat, standing on the floor together, countering that nonsense, basically refuting the things that Pelosi and Durbin just said, and just offering a coherent policy pitch.
Several senators said they weren't buying any of it. Republican Mark Kirk says he's worried about starving the Social Security Trust Fund, which takes revenue from the payroll tax. And Democrat Joe Manchin says the tax cut simply hasn't worked.
Oh, well, there you go.
We tried the payroll cut tax last year, and I supported it. But I will not double down on a failed policy.
Wow. A Democrat refusing to double down on a failed policy? That is unusual. But kudos to Joe Manchin, and kudos to Mark Kirk. I appreciate them, standing up for common sense. And woo! Hot buttered rum! Okay, so to pick up where I left off, the Republican and the Democratic plans came up for a vote in the Senate on Thursday evening. And, before I go to that, I want to mention one quick point. Sam Youngman said this on Special Report the other night.
I think this is, right now, the president's in a very politically advantageous position.
Now, I think that Republicans are or at a disadvantage. One of the Democrats are in an advantageous position on this, but not for the reasons he gave, which I obviously cut out of that clip. But basically, the reasons that Republicans are at a disadvantage here is their failure to coalesce around a single plan, whereas most Democrats will pretty much fall in line with whatever the leadership tells them to do. So what I'd like to see is some well-respected intellectual who both sides can agree is brilliant and is not a shill for either political party, explaining why the Republican plan is better than the Democratic plan in a clear and concise way.
On the issue of the offsetting cuts that Republicans are offering, it isn't only cynically chosen. All of them come out of the president's own Deficit Reduction Commission.
The Simpson-Bowles Commission, and today is the one-year anniversary of that commission's report.
But the point is that it's not cynically poll tested. It's exactly what the president's own commission had said is where you want to start when you want to cut spending. And the spending today is 25% of the economy, the highest by a huge margin in memory. And the administration cannot accept any cuts anywhere and always offers as an alternative a hike in taxes. And then as a talking point, it's only a matter of a talking point that it can use in the election to say the Republicans are protecting the rich. It is not a serious offer.
You can always count on Charles Krauthammer. But here's what happened. The last two votes the Senate took Thursday evening were on the Democratic plan and then the Republican plan. The Democratic plan, it was actually, these were what's called a motion to proceed in consideration of the measure, something. Just basically, the Democratic plan failed on a 51 to 49 vote, and then the Republican plan, that was voted down by a 78 to 20 margin, which seems large. And there are some interesting dynamics at play here. One senator actually voted in favor of both proposals, and that was Senator Susan Collins, a Republican from Maine, who I mentioned in a previous video. But what's interesting about the Republican plan is that Republicans split on it. All the Democrats voted against it, and only 20 senators voted in favor of it. But the 20 senators, it was interesting. It wasn't like it was something that only the most conservative members supported or only the moderates supported. You had pretty much the most moderate members of the Republican caucus in the Senate supporting the measure. In addition to Collins, there was her fellow Maine Senator Olympia Snowe and Senator Scott Brown. And then on the right, you had some of the most conservative members also supporting the Heller proposal, including Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky and Senator Marco Rubio of Florida. Another interesting thing I found out was that on the Democrats' plan, of the 49 senators voted against it, 46 were Republicans. 2 Democrats, Joe Manchin of West Virginia and John Tester of Montana, voted against it. And curiously, Bernie Sanders of Vermont also voted against it. So that's kind of interesting. But if anyone, I'm going to close out with this. If anyone actually thinks that the president cares about the middle class and is doing this as a genuine effort to try and jumpstart the economy, then if that explanation by Charles Krauthammer didn't convince you otherwise, then, well, take a look at this.
It's so disappointing last night that Senate Republicans voted to block that payroll tax cut. That effectively would raise taxes on nearly 160 million hardworking Americans because they didn't want to ask a few 100,000 of the wealthiest Americans to pay their fair share.
Oh my God. Okay. I mean, Republicans should run that in a commercial over and over again. Come out with a web ad and just such an unleadership-like thing to say. First of all, this BS about the wealthy not paying their fair share. We don't tax wealth in this country. We tax income. And as I've demonstrated time and again, as the empirical evidence proves, the highest income earners are paying a grossly disproportionate share of the tax bill. As I demonstrated in a previous video, the share of all federal taxes, not just income taxes, but all federal taxes paid by the top 1% of households, the first percentile in terms of income, is more than twice what it was 30 years ago. And, you know, if you want to talk about Americans not paying their fair share, then let's start with the millions of moochers who have an income but pay no federal income tax. And also, as for this being a tax increase, if you didn't want this to go back to revert to the original rate, then you should have built it as a permanent reduction in the payroll tax cut. instead, this was supposed to be a payroll tax holiday, meaning from its inception, or excuse me, conception. It was supposed to be a temporary measure, and now you're trying to claim that this is going to be a tax increase when it reverts back to the original rate. If you didn't want that, then you should have designed it differently or made the pitch to Americans differently. It's dishonest to do what the president's doing now. And finally, just as further evidence that this is just pure politicking on the president's part, not an effort to try and stimulate the economy, certainly not going to bat for the middle class in America. You noticed in that he specifically blamed Republicans, yet every Democrat in the Senate voted against Senator Heller's proposal to extend the payroll tax holiday and actually pay for it. So, not to mention, it was Democratic opposition, that this proposal that he supported, the Democrats' proposal, was rejected on a bipartisan basis. He neglected to mention that 2 Democratic senators and Bernie Sanders voted no. So, he's just a terrible president. He may be a nice guy in person. I'm sure he's a great father, devoted husband, all of that. But he shouldn't be president. And what's really sad is that Americans are suffering mightily because of his incompetence, and the few things he's been effective at doing have largely been bad for the country. And check out my website. Check out my blog. I really need you to comment on the articles, read the articles, comment on them. I need to get some comments on my blog, people. Just go there, and until next time, don't mess with the right-wing genius. And sick 'em bears!